And now on to our second question. This is actually, interestingly enough, another aging couple, and with, I think, a very interesting condo dilemma. Hi, John. I always watch your shows with great interest, and I've learned a lot about real estate issues. I am 86 and my wife is 80, and we own a 3-bedroom, 2-bath condo in a small 4-story older building with 33 units in total. Our monthly condo fee is about $800 a month and includes water, heat, cable, and one parking. Yesterday, the new property company, management company, explained their intention to borrow 1.7 million for several large repairs. The building has only 30,000 in the reserve fund, some of which is no longer available due to repairs already recently completed. The first option is to cover this amount, is to charge each unit owner about 40,000 in special assessment fees up front, or probably along some schedule. The other option would be to increase our monthly fee by $200 a month, an amount to be increased yearly to cover the loan per interest. We live in a mortgage-free bungalow close by, and we rent out this condo for $200,000 a month. Our plan was to downsize to the condo when our declining health requires us to, but given the age and poor repair of the building, we are now worried it may no longer be affordable for us. Furthermore, we are worried that if we wait any longer to sell the condo, it may be harder to do. The assessed value of the condo for property tax purposes is $279,000, but the market value is about $500,000. However, I'm worried that a potential new buyer may not be able to secure a mortgage of 80% or whatever amount due to the age of the building and the repairs it needs. What do you think we should do? I will be so ever grateful for your input. Thank you very much, Carol. Thank you, Carol, for that
Yeah.
question. John.
So this is a tough question. So just to unpack a few terms that was discussed here. So firstly, a reserve fund, for those who aren't aware, is effectively a savings account for condominiums. So every condominium, at least in Ontario, has one. Other provinces probably have the same thing. Maybe they use a different term for it. But it's effectively a savings account that is assigned to cover future repairs, right? So every condominium project has a schedule of when they anticipate certain repairs and updates to happen. And this obviously feeds into what is called a reserve fund study. And it says, okay, how much money do you need to have in your reserve fund at any given point in time? How much you should be contributing to it, and so on and so forth. Now, this building basically has nothing in their reserve fund. I think they said it was like 30,000 or something like that, which is effectively nothing. So what has happened? Well, the building has been saving nothing. And I should say, like, this is a really good example of why the management of the condo corporation's very important. I mean, I think a lot of people don't want to get involved with those things because, there's some responsibility and what's involved. But, condominiums have their own board, and the board's usually made up of unit owners, right? And what that board decides has a very material impact on you as the homeowner, as the investor, who, like, the person who has that property, in the long term. Because in this case, the condo board clearly hasn't managed the property very well because they have no savings. So now they have this massive bill of repairs that needs to be done, 1.7 million, and they have no money for it. So, the two options that were discussed were, a special assessment is effectively like getting a bill in the mail from your condominium corporation saying you need to pay up 40 grand to do these repairs. And maybe they'll say you have to do the 40 grand in one shot. Maybe you have, you can do it over 2 years. So 20 grand this year, 20 grand next year. But it's effectively getting a lump sum amount from every unit owner to do these repairs. What other condominiums do is they just borrow the full amount and pay it over a long period of time, which obviously adds interest costs, increases your maintenance fees, so on and so forth. And I think this is what they're getting at. So that's a bit of background. I mean, how do you deal with these situations? Okay, I mean, here's the challenge. Some buildings, in fact, they're correct, may have a hard time getting a mortgage on them. And I remember some buildings, one building in my neighborhood a while ago, Leslieville, when it was completed, when it was newly completed, they had all sorts of issues with leaking in the property. Windows had issues. So it was a similar situation where the condo corp basically had to borrow like 1.7 or $2 million. They were suing the builder. And because of all of these complications, there's effectively like a red flag on it. So anyone, for example, that was a first-time buyer who needed like CMHC insurance, couldn't get it. Like couldn't get it. Like it just couldn't, because they're like, we're not touching that building. So, people would be able to get a mortgage on it, but usually they would need more than 20%. And even then, some of the banks would be very conservative, maybe ask for a bigger down payment because they're worried about all of these repairs that need to be done. So there are periods when sometimes certain lenders won't want to touch a particular condo. So the challenging place to be now for these owners is this is like a very hard time to sell. Once the condo has said we're short money, anyone who goes out and buys this unit is going to see that there's this massive shortfall, right? And it makes it extremely hard to sell the unit. So the issue is not that the unit is old. Many old buildings sell all the time, but the ones that do and get good prices are old but well managed, have a decent reserve fund, have been keeping the building, up to date. It's the poor management and the lack of savings that makes it harder to sell this unit in the future, because any new buyer is going to be stuck with paying these repairs, right? So if you think about it as a new buyer, it's like, I'm getting into this building, I'm paying now for the repairs that the previous owners didn't touch for 20 years. And now that bill's coming down on me. And usually what happens in these situations, to be frank, is usually buyers will include a clause that says the seller is paying that 40 grand special assessment, not the purchaser, right? So, to answer the question, again, it's tough to say, like, should you sell it? I mean, generally you don't want to sell it when the building has these issues kind of going on right now. Like if they issue a special assessment, they get the $1.7 million, they do the repairs, and they have a decent plan to top up their reserve fund. The building looks like it's in a better position financially. The budget looks good. The reserve fund's kind of increasing after a year or two. That is a way better position to be in as a unit owner who wants to sell, right? So I would not be selling necessarily right now, because now's the most challenging time. If you don't want to get involved on the board, you should at least be showing up at meetings to voice your questions to see what their plan is to get their finances in order. So I think that is kind of the first thing that I would do. And if they want to move into the unit, and it's, at the end of the day, can you handle the costs over the short term until it's a better time to sell if you want to move into another building in the future, right? But most condo buildings will have these concerns. Hopefully you'd be buying in someone that is a little bit more well managed. But again, the goal, I think, would be to kind of be a little bit more active to get to see this building in a better financial position. And then at that point, you may not even need to sell it because the costs are manageable, the buildings run properly. The big issue right now is that it just doesn't sound like it's operating very well, and that needs to get back on track.
Some really important points there. So, those of us who live in condos, we don't always appreciate that, we need to be as aware as we are as a person who owns a house, that their, roof needs to be replaced in 7 years and so forth. We should really know that much about the exterior of our condos and the shared amenities part. And often we don't, but that eventually is coming to us. And so that's a great point. We don't know if this couple bought in recently, maybe it was another time and there wasn't even an easy way to get involved and really understand the management of the condo. That's really changed. And John, I think it's important. I just want to clarify all the position of the condo, its reserve status, what issues it has, whether it has lawsuits, is obvious to every buyer or potential buyer, because they would order what in Ontario they call a status certificate before making an offer or finalizing an offer. In many bids, my understanding is a buyer offer is contingent on reviewing that status.
Yeah.
So if you think you're going to get away with, hopefully them not knowing about all these problems,
Mhm.
not going to happen, which
Mhm.
is why your advice kicks in about, maybe waiting until, would it be fair to say, even if all the repairs aren't done, at least the plan is securely in place, you
Yeah,
know what it's costing people, you know what I mean? And it's being undertaken.
exactly. And, and the special assessment's been paid. And generally, the special assessment, I mean, personally, if I was living there, I'd rather have everybody have to pay 40 grand over the next year or two and get it off the table rather than jacking up maintenance fees by 200-300 bucks a month for the next 15 years. It's obviously short-term pain, but again, it'll be easier to sell the unit. It clears it off. It kind of reduces the total cost because you're going to be paying interest on that 1.7 million at a relatively high rate, which is going to add to the cost. So, and you're not just transferring that to the buyer. Like most buyers are going to see that and pay less because your maintenance fees are so high. So it's just better to kind of, pay it off, fix the problem, and hopefully have a plan to get the finances back in order.
And to be fair, John, that's, you might think about it similar to a homeowner who
Yeah,
needs to fix their roof or something
not that
really
different.
that turns off buyers before
Mhm.
they prep a house for sale.
Mhm.
Sometimes when we're in condos, we feel dismayed or
Mhm.
overly dismayed. I mean, these realities are faced by both groups of people. So it might be a way to think about it. But it sounds like, Carol, maybe that's option one. I do want to thank you for laying out the situation so well for us. And I hope you find that helpful. And I think others can get a lot of use of you sharing that with us. So thank you.